I was told there would be all-you-can-eat churros at this movie. There were none. That is blatant false advertising. 0 out of 10. There's your review. Goodbye. I'm just kidding. So not too long ago, I checked out The Book of Life, the latest movie by Guillermo del Toro, who has slowly started to become my favorite person in Hollywood. Although he just produced the movie was actually created by Jorge Gutierrez, creator of El Tigre, a show I have never actually seen. But people tell me it's good, so it probably is. A lot of great actors in this movie too. There was Ron Perlman, because it's not a Guillermo del Toro movie without Ron Perlman. Christina Applegate was in this as well. She was the narrator. You got Channing Tatum, who played Joaquin, and he was just hilarious in this. I'm really beginning to love Channing Tatum because he can do just about anything. You can put him in an action movie, you can put him in a comedy, you can even just give him a cameo in a movie and he will own it. You got Zoe Saldana, who played Maria. Another person in this movie who I was not actually familiar with is Diego Luna, who played Manolo, the main character. It seems like he did a lot of Latino programming, a lot of TV shows and movies. I don't think I've ever seen him or heard him in anything else, but he was really good. His performance was so believable. Not to mention he can sing. There was a lot of musical performances in this movie, and most of them were by Manolo, and he actually sang them out, and man, he's good. Of course, this movie takes place in Mexico, so they got a lot of Latino celebrities to do voices. Danny Trejo, Gabriel Iglesias, Cheech Marin, Placido Domingo, just to name a few. The one I can't quite figure out is Ice Cube. Yeah, Ice Cube was in this movie, and how the hell did that happen? I mean, he was great, don't get me wrong, but how the hell did that happen? So the plot of this movie is Xibalba, who is Ron Perlman's character, is the ruler of the land of the forgotten, where people go after they die when no one remembers them. They don't have loved ones, they don't have anybody who cared about them in the world of the living. And his ex-girlfriend, I guess, La Muerte, who is the ruler of the land of the remembered, which is the afterlife, where there's just an eternal party going on because it's full of people who have loved ones that still remember them in the land of the living. So Xibalba goes to her and says, I'm sick and tired of ruling the land of the forgotten. It's sad and depressing and gray and I don't want to do it anymore. So they have a bet, and whoever wins the bet gets to rule over the land of the remembered. Each of them pick either Joaquin or Manolo, and they decide that whoever's boy marries the girl, Maria, gets to rule the land of the remembered. Maria goes away, but then we skip ahead a little bit and she comes back, and it turns out Manolo is a bullfighter who doesn't want to fight bulls. Well, he fights bulls, but he doesn't really want to fight bulls. He does it good, but at the end of the bullfighting match, you gotta kill the bull, and I didn't know this was an actual thing that they did in bullfighting. I mean, I didn't know that much about bullfighting to begin with, but apparently that's what they do. But he doesn't want to kill the bulls. Instead, he wants to be a musician. And Joaquin becomes this macho hero of the town with a manly mustache and this barreled chest, and he's a soldier, and he stops the banditos from taking out, you know, all the wooden people that live there. Everyone's made of wood, by the way. But Xibalba tricks them, and Manolo ends up dying and going to the land of the remembered. So now he must find La Muerte and tell her that Xibalba cheated and he needs a mulligan so he can go back and save everyone from banditos that showed up and win Maria's heart. I love the style of this movie. I had some doubts about the way they looked at first with the, you know, the wooden puppet design. Everyone had, like, you know, doll joints and wood textures over their faces, but it works very well in this. What's really interesting is that even though this is a CGI movie, a lot of the style from Jorge Gutierrez's show El Tigre is used for it. And I've never seen the show, but I've seen pictures of it, I've seen clips of it, and it's a flash show. It's a very, very 2D looking design. and I was very surprised at how well those designs translated to the third dimension. A lot of the characters did look a bit awkward, but many of them were only shown from the front. We never see them turn or anything like that. There was one guy who had kind of like a sideways face and his nose just kind of came down like that. And that really looks like a 2D design, but they just constantly just showed him from the front, like he always moved like this instead of, you know, being in the third dimension like everybody else. And that was a really interesting way of doing it, and it worked. A lot of really good themes in this movie, one of which is a very important thing to have in a kids movie, and that's with dealing with the death of a loved one. And they say, you know, as long as you always remember the person, they're never truly dead. And there's not a lot of movies I can think of that actually touches on that. Character motivations were really interesting too. Both Manolo and Joaquin were motivated by their father's legacies. Like, Joaquin's father was a soldier, and he wanted to be a strong soldier just like his father was. And Manolo's father is a bullfighter who, you know, pushed him to become a great bullfighter. But in the end, they both decided that they don't have to be living in their father's shadows. They can do what they want. And that's another very important thing for a kids movie. Another interesting thing was there wasn't really a villain in this movie. Well, there was a villain, but he was more of an obligatory villain. But you'd think that Xibalba would be the token bad guy for the movie, but he really wasn't. He, besides from tricking Manolo, he didn't really do anything evil, and in the end, really all he wanted was to not be cast aside and be just the ruler of the land of the forgotten. I kind of like that they did that, you know, because good and evil isn't always so black and white all the time. Sometimes the biggest villain is yourself. Finally, this movie was actually a really good love story. I mean, I don't consider myself an expert on love stories, but hey, I was invested. Now, there were a couple of things I didn't like about this movie. For one, there was a wraparound segment where the movie was being told by the narrator, Christina Applegate, who was a guide at a museum, and she was telling the story to a bunch of kids and acting them out with little, you know, wooden dolls. That's why everybody was all wooden. And I kind of feel like that was unnecessary. Like, they really could have written this movie without that. Another problem this movie has was there was too much comic relief. It seemed like 90% of the characters were just goofy, comedic characters, and many of them didn't even have big roles, but they were just kind of always there. Like, Manolo had a bunch of mariachi guys that he hung out with. They were all comedic relief. Joaquin, when he was being a soldier, there was other soldiers who were also comic reliefs. There was a pig, there was a priest and a bunch of nuns that were comic relief. Just any background character was comic relief. Then they got to the Land of the Remembered, and we met the Sanchez family, who's Manolo's family, and it seems like every one of them was a comic relief. That's too much comedy! Granted, a lot of them weren't around very long, but it felt like it was taking away time from other characters that seemed a lot more interesting and a lot cooler, you know? Like, we met, I think they were Manolo's cousins, these twins, who were in the Land of the Remembered. I don't even remember their names. That's how pushed aside they were. I don't even think I could find pictures of them, or at least good ones. And yeah, they were cool. We barely got to see them. I think between the two of them, there was like 6 lines or 7 lines. Like I said before, this movie looks gorgeous, and even when they were in the Land of the Living, it looked amazing. But when they got to the Land of the Remembered, it was just like, whoa! That is incredible. The problem is, we didn't really see the Land of the Remembered for that long. And that was one of the things advertised in the trailer. And you thought that we were going to have big, amazing adventures in the Land of the Remembered. And honestly, it was a little disappointing. I wanted to see more of that. Now, I got one last nitpick, and it's Channing Tatum himself. And like I said before, I love the guy, but he stood out in this movie so bad because 90% of the movie was Latino voice actors. It took place in Mexico, and Channing had the whitest, most Caucasianist voice of anybody in this movie. And yes, I know that there were other non-Hispanic voices in this movie, but for some reason they didn't stand out as much. I don't know if anybody else had a problem with this, but to me it just stood out a little too much, you know? I know this movie went through a lot of changes, and a lot of that might attribute to Pixar announcing that they're doing their own movie about the Day of the Dead. I don't know how much influence that had on this movie, but I believe they may have been trying to avoid comparison, although they probably would have been okay considering the movie's not coming out till like 2018. But for all we know, there could have been a lot of studio influence on this one. Nevertheless, I really did enjoy this movie. I actually enjoyed it more than Box Trolls. So if it's still playing in your area, be sure to check it out. Sorry I'm very late doing this. I was busy working on something else you should also check out. But I'll try to be a little more attentive to these videos. So coming up, we got Mike Tyson Mysteries, which I already checked out a little bit of, so I'll do a video of that soon. We got Big Hero 6 coming up. I haven't talked about The Legend of Korra yet, and we have the one I'm really anticipating, Cartoon Network's Over the Garden Wall, so I'll be doing videos on all of those sometime in the near future. But for now, that's all I got. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of the Book of Life. My name is Rob, I'm wonderful, and I'll see you next time.